Well, as I told you Wednesday morning before the news came out, the government made a decision after 18 months of vacillation. Health officials finally released their decision on policies around the prescription of puberty blocker drugs to minors. And this is after a thing called the Cass report in Britain that raised serious questions. And the government has decided, it was announced by Simeon Brown on the advice of health officials, that this particular drug will not be prescribed anymore to any new minor patients for the treatment of gender dysphoria. It is still used, of course, for the treatment of conditions like endometriosis and other medical conditions. Those who have campaigned on transgender issues on both sides reacted to this news. And we have observed here on the platform that mainstream media coverage of this issue seemed to downplay the significance of it. And many experts were trotted out, and a consensus amongst the mainstream media experts was that this is all part of a culture war and it's very politicised. One of those experts, quoted extensively, was Dame Sue Bagshaw, who joins us by video link now. Dame Sue, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. Would it be fair for, well, actually, no, rather than me put words in your mouth, could I ask you, Dame Sue, what is your response to this decision by the government?
Well, Kia ora, Sean. I'm worried. I think it's great for government to actually try and make sure that everybody's safe, and that's their responsibility in many ways, which we're being let down on in many ways, but I won't go there. But in this particular
instance, in relation to puberty blockers, we're being let down, did you say?
I think we're being let down in regards to safety in many areas of public life.
Okay, is that just a general political view you're expressing there?
That's a different matter.
Okay, but you were just general. I just want to clarify, that's not about what we're talking about. That's your general political view.
That's a general
view.
Thing,
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
In terms of puberty blockers, yes, there needs to be more research. The Cass report actually has been brought into quite a lot of disrepute. It's not new. It's about 3 years old. And there's been a lot of objections raised to it in terms of inaccuracies. Hence the review that the UK are undertaking.
And we're going to rate for. Could I just, while you're there though, today, I think in the last 48 hours, a report, 410 reports page reports come out in America called Treatment for Pediatric Gender Dysphoria, a Review of Evidence and Best Practices. It's the US equivalent of the Cass report, and section 7.3 of that report lists the medical issues with puberty blockers and gender dysphoria, and the executive summary of that report sums this up as the risk of pediatric medical transition include infertility, sterility, sexual dysfunction, impaired bone density, accrual, adverse cognitive impacts, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic disorders and regret. That seems to mirror a lot of the concerns in the Cass report, doesn't it? And that's just published in the last 48 hours.
I'd love to see the studies that they base those conclusions on, because I must admit that I've never seen a study which shows that blockers cause infertility. Hormones do, but blockers, I've not seen a study ever. We've been using them for precocious puberty, i.e. people who enter puberty before 8, for a long time.
And you'll still be able to use them for precocious puberty, won't you, under these guidelines?
Yeah, which really concerns me.
So that's not really an issue, that what we've been using it for ages, you'll still be able to use it for. This is quite specific. It's for the treatment of gender.
We're talking about safety here. If they're not safe in gender dysphoria, then they're not safe in precocious
We're not
puberty.
actually talking about safety. We're talking about the efficacy of prescribing a drug to someone for the treatment of a condition, the condition being gender dysphoria. And does prescribing minors puberty blockers do anything to improve or to address the issue of gender dysphoria, and all the studies suggest that it doesn't. In fact, the risk of self-harm and suicide amongst young people who do transition is higher than those who don't.
I don't believe that, and I'd love to see the study that statement is based on.
Okay. Are you, Sue, an expert in this area?
It depends how do you define an expert? Sean,
are you an expert on gender dysphoria and puberty blockers?
How do you define an expert, Sean?
Well, I don't know. ZB was happy to call you, and everyone in mainstream media was happy to call you an expert yesterday. I presume you presented yourself as an expert, or was that them just presuming?
Did not.
So you're not an expert.
It was presumed.
So you're not an expert.
It depends what you mean by expert, Sean. If you mean an expert who's spent their whole life studying one topic, then no, I'm not. If you mean an expert is somebody who's worked with young people with gender dysphoria for 20 years, then I am.
Okay, in what context, and thanks for that. So in what context have you worked with young people with gender dysphoria?
Clinically, in terms of the clinical interaction with young people with gender dysphoria.
Okay, have you prescribed puberty blockers yourself?
I have.
Okay, so you are part of, and I'm not going to call it the industry, so you've actually already on a side of this and that you believe they're good because you've used them.
I've used them, I've seen the benefit of them.
What is the benefit of them?
Improved mental health, improved relationships with parents usually because they understand what's going on, and improvement in their sense of identity and who they are.
I'm going to ask you a trade question, Sue. What is a woman?
Well, I think the one thing that's wrong with that question, Sean, is I would like you to change what is a woman to who is a woman, and you did that just then, which was great. Who is a woman is who a woman perceives herself to be and how you perceive her.
No, there has to be a scientific basis for what a woman is as well, though, isn't there? Doesn't there?
Well, what is a different matter. Now, if you're...
Okay, let's start with that one. Let's start with what is a woman.
Okay, so if you want to define it biologically, there's XY and XXY, XYY, XXYY. There's all sorts of combination of chromosomes that determine gender. So that question, what is a woman in terms of biological determination, is actually fraught with issues.
Why?
Because there's all sorts of ways, the chromosomes that dictate gender.
And what percentage of people don't fall into that traditional one thing or t'other? What percentage of people in the world?
Probably about the same percentage as transgender people, actually.
Well, no, I didn't bring transgender into it. Let's stick to the topic, shall we, Sue? Okay, so Sue, let's stick to it. What percentage of people of our population are not within the binary definition of what sex is and gender is? And that's the chromosomal definition. No, what I'm talking about is my question to you, Sue, which I'd love it if you could answer.
We're talking about intersex here, and the problem is we haven't done chromosome blood tests on every single member of the population, and we're never going to.
Okay, but what is the generally accepted? What is the generally accepted variance or occurrence of intersex?
It's probably about 1 to 2%, but
1 to 2%.
Don't quote me on that because I'm not sure.
Okay. My understanding was that it's less than that, but okay, let's take 1 to 2%. Okay.
We don't know because we've not done the prevalence study.
No. Okay, so really, everyone's either an innie or an outie, as they say, right? Right? And
I don't know what you mean by that.
Yeah, but what you feel you might be, that doesn't change that biological reality, does it?
Well, it doesn't. Well, what you feel you might be is quite a different thing, or what you feel you are is quite a different thing from your chromosomes.
Is it? But what you feel
like
doesn't.
Grapes,
but what you feel doesn't change your chromosomes, does it?
No, it doesn't.
And you can't change your chromosomes, can you?
No, you can't. Okay. Well, no, you can't. No, exactly right.
All right. Okay. All right, and that's just the biological effect of it. And And I think that's just the science of it. I come back then, what are puberty blockers meant to do in that world then? Because
Puberty
gender
blockers
dysphoria,
delay.
how many people have gender dysphoria, or is it just a trend?
1 to 2%.
Okay, but those aren't the same 1 to 2% who are chromosomally, different.
No, they're not.
Okay.
No, they're not.
So why change? Why give them puberty blockers to treat that?
Puberty blockers don't treat it at all.
Then why give it to them?
If you listen, Sean, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I am.
If all they do is delay the onset of puberty, they don't change anything. They just delay. The idea about delaying is to allow young people to explore their identity, because nobody wakes up and says, I'm a woman, I'm a man. Nobody's born that way. But they learn it because society teaches them what a woman and what a man is. So they're born with their chromosomes, but they learn how to behave according to what society says those chromosomes should be doing.
Are you saying that gender or the idea of being a man or woman is a social construct?
Believe it or not, yes, I am, Sean.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting cultural position. And thank you for answering the question. You've said you believe this has become politicised. Could you give me an example of how this issue's been politicised, please?
My concern is that what the politicians are doing is jumping on society's moral panic about the deconstruction of gender.
Can you give me an example, please?
About the politicisation
you
of
say
moral
it's been
panic.
politicised, yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at puberty blockers then. Puberty blockers need more research into their use.
Yeah.
Every single drug we use in this age group all need more research into their use. We're never perfect. We never know enough about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So what are we going to take off all the drugs that we can use because they need more research? And why are we taking this one off as opposed to any others?
Okay, because it doesn't really do anything to help people who've got... See, and also someone's just pointed out the figures you've suggested that we'd have 50,000 people with gender dysphoria in New Zealand. We're talking about 300 or 400 kids here, aren't we?
We're talking... No, more than that. We're talking about 1 to 2% of young people, and that's 17% of the population, so it's not quite the same numbers, Sean.
All right. Why does delaying puberty help anyone with their gender dysphoria? Have you got any studies that show how that happens?
What we're doing is actually delaying doing irreversible stuff. So what puberty blockers does is delay having to take that step of doing irreversible things.
But you have already admitted that we don't know the damage that puberty blockers might do, which is why medically we've decided to push forward.
We know the issues that happen short term. We do not know the issues that happen long term.
I come back to, where is the proof that delaying puberty in any way assists people in dealing with gender dysphoria?
Clinical experience tells you that.
Okay,
and
is there a report that has brought together that clinical experience? Because the CAS report and this report in the US say there isn't.
No, because they haven't done one.
Well, who has?
And that's the problem here. That nobody has, because it's
okay, so you are
Nobody wants to
literally
know
making this shite up, Sue.
No, I am not. I'm doing it on the basis of my clinical experience. And what my clinical experience tells me, and you can ignore my clinical experience if you want to, but the clinical experience of all the doctors who've worked with young people with gender dysphoria tells us that it improves their mental health because they delay the changes to their body and gives them a chance to explore their identity.
Wow.
When they're worried about it.
How do you feel about when people aren't kids anymore, physical mutilation as a treatment for gender dysphoria, and that is taking off someone's breast, taking off their penis, interfering with their sexual organs? Do you think that's a really good medical practice?
That's not happening very often at all, Sean. So I don't think you can use that.
Okay. So I'm just thinking that this is essentially a psychological issue, gender dysphoria, or a social social construct idea So the idea of using
the
idea of using drugs to deal with it just seems crazy to me.
It's a psychological issue that is a reaction to social construct. And I think what we need to do, and that's why we're delaying it, so we don't have to do any different surgeries, so we don't have to do any irreversible actions. We can help young people explore it without the dysphoria associated with the changes in their body.
Okay.
And that's the point.
You are aware of the increasing number of people who have, young people, who are now looking to sue their parents and social agencies for the fact that they were transitioned?
They haven't been transitioned by using puberty blockers. They're only transitioned when they start hormones. Puberty blockers are not hormones. I've said that time and time again.
Come on, I think generally it's appreciated. They're the first step. They're the first step.
No, you don't. If you actually discuss and explore with young people properly, many of them do not go on to hormones. But the point being that this gives them a delay so they don't give up hope and just kill themselves or
come on. That is the cry-bully argument on this for so long. The fact is there are also studies that suggest people who transition, people who have surgeries, are at higher risk of self-harm and suicide than those who don't.
I don't think, I'd love to see the study of that.
Okay, we'll get them to you. I will get them to you.
Good.
So you also said that aspirin is more dangerous than puberty blockers. Why don't...
That's true.
But we're not using aspirin to treat gender dysphoria, though it looks to me like it would be as much use. You know...
well, you haven't had the experience, Sean. You're not a doctor, so I don't think you can make that statement.
Okay, so aspirin. Why did you bring aspirin into it? It seemed a completely specious kind of...
purely because... It's purely because it's an example of a drug that we haven't taken off the market, which is actually quite harmful in terms of gastric bleeding.
Would you like to get rid of aspirin?
I would.
Good Lord. Okay. All right. Now, I just still after an example of this being politicised. A real world example, not your feels or your reckons, but an example of
my example was...
Yeah.
My example was that they're taking this drug off the market as opposed to similar drugs.
It's not being taken off the market, Sue. It's being restricted in its prescription for a specific group of people. It's still available to lots of people, including those you've identified who have precocious, precocious adolescence or whatever. It's still there for people with endometriosis. So it's not being taken off the market, is it?
So we're withdrawing treatment for a particular group of people.
Well, there's no clear evidence that it is a treatment that works, is it? And apart from your anecdotal clinical experience.
And a lot of other people's
anecdotal clinical experience.
I have been applying for money to do research into this, and there's no money. So
why don't you just go and do it out of the goodness of your heart? So, actually, when you were described as an expert in the mainstream media, you're an advocate, Sue, aren't you? You've got a pre-existing, non-disinterested, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a free bloody country. But you get described as an expert and put up as some impartial font of truth on this. You're into this like a robber's dog on one side of the argument. And as I say, nothing wrong with that. You're allowed to be that. It's a free country. But do you see how you kind of are being misrepresented as an expert on this when you in fact have a pre-existing condition on a pre-existing belief on one side of a debate?
Sean, I can't control what the media call me.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I'm with you on that. I can see that. All right. But we've got where we have. We hope that this decision doesn't damage anyone. I don't think it will. I think it's a public health decision. You've said it's part of a culture war. Can you describe that for me? What's the culture war?
Not observed. Maybe, John, you haven't observed the rise in the way misogyny is occurring, especially amongst young men. I didn't come here to discuss misogyny. I just came here to discuss the government's policy decision on the prescription of a drug. Yeah, and I think this is a culture war around gender, and that's why I brought up misogyny. So I think the gender construct that this is being based on, because it seems to me that people are quite scared of the whole concept of saying, let's
I
not
talk
have
to a
women
lot of
and men
women's groups
socially
and lesbian women who are very scared about this because they say their safety is compromised. That's in a wider thing. That's not just the puberty blockers. And there is a feeling, Sue, that, and you, now that you've identified yourself as being on one side of this argument, that that you're part of the culture war because you believe that gender and sexual identity is something that you can kind of, I don't know, create yourself. You know?
Well, to me, it's a bit like ethnicity. You're born with, from Maori descent, but you don't want to present yourself as Maori. You don't identify.
Can I be Maori if I identify it as it, Sue?
I think that if you'd like to identify with Maori culture, then yes.
Can I be a woman? You obviously think I can.
I do.
Terrific. All right. Sue, I thank you for coming on this morning. I think I understand your point of view and where you come from much, much more clearly.
I guess what I'm really wanting to say is I'd like you to you're a person who supports free speech.
Yeah.
I think you should be supporting free identification of what your gender and your ethnicity.
I support free existence of reality. Yeah.
No, reality is not just about reality. When you look at a painting, and I look at a painting, your reality of that painting is different from mine.
But you're not allowed to say it's not a painting, it's a sculpture. That's your problem.
No, I'm not saying it's not a painting or a sculpture. I'm saying my perception of what I assume.
But we both agree it's a painting, right? That's what a reality is, Sue. It's a painting.
But it's
not a sculpture, and it's not a dog or a cat. It's a painting.
Dawn, it's telling you, but what the painting's telling you is to give you a message about what the painting's about. And the exterior of a person gives you a message about what the person is about. Okay. That's all the gender dysphoria is.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Greatly appreciated. Have a great day. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. That is Dame Sue Bagshaw, one of the experts that mainstream media have trotted out to try and criticise the government's decision on puberty blockers.